Hello and welcome. You are on StratNews Global, and I'm Nitin Gokhale. First of all, very happy New Year, prosperous, healthy, and happy 2021 to all our viewers. This is the first program that I'm doing this year, and let's hope that the ravages made by the coronavirus and the after effects on the economy and the health sector are reduced during this year. But while the situation in the economy and generally in the health sector is all set to change with the vaccine coming in for COVID, I think the situation on the line of actual control in eastern Ladakh remains unchanged even after 9 months. Yesterday, in fact, the standoff completed 9 months on the 5th of January. Remember, it started on 5th of May 2020. And belying all expectations right at the beginning, the standoff has continued for 9 months now, as I just said. And there's no sign of any breakthrough or an immediate breakthrough in that face off between India and China on the line of actual control. There were two promises made by China, one in June, the other in October. But there has been no further progress on any talks or any de escalation, disengagement, or even de induction. Now, remember, it's been 2 months since the last round of the Corps Commanders level talks took place at the Chushul Moldo meeting point, border meeting point between India and China. And since then, there has been no breakthrough. One meeting, of course, between the diplomats or the WMCC, the Working Mechanism for Coordination and Consultation, took place on 14th of December. That was the last time when India and China have spoken on the situation along the LAC. But on ground, nothing has changed. In fact, if anything, the temperatures have gone down. It's peak winter now in Ladakh. In the daytime, at 12 noon, people who are posted there tell me that the temperature shows minus 20 degrees at Chushul and areas like Depsang, or maybe Depsang is even lower, PP14, Galwan, all those areas. It's minus 20 degrees and goes lower as the sun sets late in the evening after 6:30 or 7. So the harsh winter is very much here. The earlier expectations that the de-escalation will take place before the winter sets in have, of course, been belied completely. And this is perhaps for the first time that both armies, particularly the PLA, the People's Liberation Army, the Chinese army, is deployed in the harsh winters in eastern Ladakh. Although Indian troops do have an experience of being deployed round the clock on the Siachen Glacier, which is far higher than the current altitudes in eastern Ladakh. So, what is the situation there? All indications are, and all the inputs that I get suggest that Indian troops have settled into a routine, keeping a watchful eye all along the line of actual control in eastern Ladakh, which runs from north to south, from DBO to right down to Chumur and Demchok. In fact, if our producers can put up the map of Aksai Chin that we have, just to give a perspective. So from Daulat Beg Oldie in the north, near the Karakoram Pass, right down to the black line, as you can see, is actually the Aksai Chin area, the dotted line. But the line of actual control is in red. And all those familiar names that you've now sort of heard since May, PP14, Galwan, Hot Springs, Shiok, and the Pangong Lake, as you can see in blue. This is the theater that we are talking about, the theater of current standoff. And there's no change as far as the ground situation is concerned. Troops, as I said, have settled into a routine. They are keeping a watchful eye, particularly in friction points like the Kailash subsector or the Chushul area, as we call it. In fact, that old map that we have used before, but I want to place that map again. This is the Kailash range, and the turning of the tables, if I may say so, happened on 29th and 30th of August, when Indian troops went and occupied all those blue dots that you see in this map: Gurung Hill, Spangur Gap, of course, is being is the gap which allows movement across the line of actual control. There is Magar Hill, there is Mukpari, the highest peak. There is Rizangla, Richinla. These are the high peaks that Indian forces went and occupied on the night of 29th, 30th August, and in a way turned the tables on the Chinese at this place, at the Kailash range, and has now allowed Indian troops to, or Indian negotiators to have an equal footing as far as negotiations are concerned. And perhaps this is the operation because of which the Chinese are now not talking about de-escalation, because the advantage that they thought they had has been negated by this operation. So, what is the routine there? According to those who are deployed there and those who are in the know, uh, troops go up to Mukpari, to Richinla, Rizangla, all these places for about a week's time at a time from the base of Chushul garrison, which is at 14,000 feet, whereas Mukpari, Richinla, Rizangla are above 16 and a half to 17,000 feet. And they just go up there and stay there for 7 days in the temporary accommodations that are there. These are tents. Some of them are not some, all of them are well heated, but it's not advisable to stay there for more than 7 days because I'm sorry, there was a sudden power cut at the moment, so for some moments, and therefore you couldn't see me. I hope, please bear with us. There's been some technical issue. Yeah. Uh, So, as I was saying, I'm sorry for the interruption there. It's not a cyber attack as some people have suggested. It was a power cut, and we had to come back on the backup of the power situation or the power line in the office itself. But let me come back to what I was saying, that at Mukpari and Richinla and Rizangla, troops spend about a week's time. Then they come back to the Chushul base, and this kind of um, turnover keeps taking place at the peak or the Kailash range. At the base itself, troops spend about a month or so, and then they go back to the permanent locations of these formations to which they belong. There have been good facilities have been established both at the Chushul base as well as at the peaks on the Kailash range. Basic living, good eating facility, hot food which is cooked and then transported to those places. But I'm not just talking about the Kailash range. Let's also look at the situation at the finger area, finger 4, finger 8, which is now very familiar to almost everyone. Now, even in these places, if you look at the purple line, going in between, where the Chinese think the LAC goes through finger 4, and we think the LAC goes through finger 8. The Indians think like that. So at the top of the finger 4, which is a very high peak or a high altitude, there are Indian troops stationed now, and they are also again taken good care of by turning them over every 7 to 10 days. Good food, proper tentage, winter clothing, heating facilities, all have been given at these places in along the line of actual control. The fact is, even at the Richingla, Rizangla, or even Demchok, Depsang and Demchok, which are two extremes of the eastern Ladakh boundary, the facilities have now well been established. There are depots. Food supply is absolutely fabulous, and of course, one can't get over the cold. But because India has had the Siachen experience since 1984, there is much more resilience, much more adaptability in the Indian troops, those who have been through the experience, and those who haven't been through the Siachen experience have had the experience in either in the northeast, in Arunachal Pradesh, or in Sikkim, or even in the high altitude areas of Jammu and Kashmir. So, therefore, the Indian troops are far better off both physically and in their minds. They are not really overwhelmed by the situation itself. But on the Chinese side, the Indians have picked up several intelligence reports through both intercepts, electronic intercepts, as well as the assets that India has in Tibet, which is actually the Aksai Chin area where some of these reports come from assets inside Tibet. And it's very interesting. And this is the interesting part of this whole program that I want to bring to you, that there are murmurs now on the Chinese side that suggest that young Chinese soldiers, conscripts really, who are expected to serve about 2 years in the Chinese military before going back to their profession, either in teaching or in any other profession. They spend 2 years in the military service. Now, normally the 2 year term ends end of September every year, and many of those conscripts who had been recruited in 2018 are deployed along the LAC in Aksai Chin in Ladakh, opposite Indian troops in eastern Ladakh sector. Those soldiers, the young soldiers, were expecting to go back to their uh, original professions, maybe resume academic pursuits or go back to their jobs, civilian jobs, by January, when we are speaking now in the first week of January 2021. But because the deployment has been prolonged, the standoff has got prolonged, they have not been able to go back. And now intercepts of conversations between these um, soldiers, young soldiers, and their parents, their friends back home suggest, several intercepts suggest that the high altitude experience has been traumatic for these soldiers. They've never lived for this long in high altitude. They were told that they will be going home soon, but this hasn't happened, and they've told their families. Several intercepts have been now collated, and they've told their families they do not know when they will get back to their normal life, civilian life, maybe back to the cities and the towns that they come from. So, therefore, the overall sense there is that there is mental trauma because they're away from their families, they're away from civilization, if I may say that, because it is not near any town or any city, the deployment that the Chinese are doing. In fact, laborers who are expected to construct the roads on the Chinese side are being deployed in Ladakh, and My apologies once again. The power is back and the generator tripped, and this is something not in my hand. But thank you for staying on, and in fact, continuing to watch this program. So let me come to the end of the first segment that I was going to talk about. That the Chinese are experiencing several difficulties in maintaining machinery, vehicles, their equipment, because it is packing up in cold weather. This is extreme cold weather, remember? Minus 20 to minus 40 degrees at several places. UAVs have been spotted by Indian intelligence and Indian ISR capabilities being transported on horseback when vehicles have been giving trouble. They're not starting. Engines are freezing over because the diesel freezes over. And therefore, there are shortages of fuel and, of course, sometimes even heating equipment in tents. So don't believe all those propaganda videos that you're seeing from Global Times and Chinese military handles, or even People's Daily, where they're showing hot pot being given to the Chinese soldiers. They're eating hot meals, is what the Chinese have been saying. All that may be true for the cameras that have been deployed for propaganda, but in reality, on the ground, intercepts, intelligence reports, and what Indian soldiers are seeing with their own eyes across the LAC, where they are face to face, eyeball to eyeball, suggest that it's been an overall traumatic experience for the Chinese soldiers who are not used to staying for such prolonged periods in high altitude areas of Aksai Chin and Ladakh. But that is, of course, what the Chinese are going through. But let's look ahead. I mean, what next? Since the talks haven't taken place, the ninth round, people keep saying both in Beijing and Delhi that the ninth round of talks between core commanders will take place. It doesn't seem like happening. So, what should India do, and what is India doing? First of all, having learned its lessons in the past 9 months, India has now decided, in fact, more or less signed the contract with the Israelis to lease three UAVs, the Herons, for deployment at high altitude areas in Ladakh for 4 years. This is a new way of procurement or leasing equipment and platforms for Indian military, since this saves some money. And this is what the Indian Army has decided to lease three Heron UAVs from Israel for 4 years. These will be deployed along the line of actual control. They have been purchased under the emergency procurement powers that have been given to all the vice chiefs of the three services. So they have been now procured from Israel. This will considerably boost the ISR, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance capability of the Indian Army. In addition to all that, there are 40 odd um, RPAs, the remotely piloted vehicles or remotely piloted aircraft, are being procured for tactical intelligence, so that every unit or battalion deployed along the LAC can have its own um, beyond visual range kind of look into the enemy territory when these RPAs are deployed. They have been purchased from wherever the Indians could. Interestingly and most hearteningly, the Indian firms have started producing extreme cold weather clothing. You would have got a little concerned that why is India importing or purchasing extreme cold clothing from abroad? But that was because there was a sudden requirement and Indian manufacturers couldn't cope with it. They didn't have the stocks. So therefore, they had to be procured from the United States and Europe. But now they have mastered the manufacturing, and of course they have stepped up the numbers of snow clothing that they are manufacturing for Indian troops. So that is already happening. The turnover of the Indian troops, as I mentioned, is also now a well established routine, from base to peaks and from base to the permanent locations. So, what is the Indian Army doing? I will have maybe another program because it's already 21 minutes or so. The Indian Army is also now wargaming, preparing for possible scenarios, war scenarios, or short conflict occurring during the summer months, which will begin in May, just 5 months later. So there is a lot of churn, lot of thinking, a lot of deliberations going on about the reorganization of the Indian Army, and the So how they will be recalibrated, or how the rebalance will take place, is being deliberated by the Indian top brass. In fact, if you want to see what the reorbiting of the Indian Army is going to be, I had done a program exactly a month ago. The link is available in the description of this video when you go to the YouTube. So therefore, do watch that program going back, how Indian Army is planning to boost and bolster the strength and its deployment along the LAC in eastern Ladakh and elsewhere, of course, in Arunachal Pradesh and in Sikkim, is what I talked about in that program. You might read some reports now, but this is something that I had spoken about a month ago. The link is available to that YouTube video. But that's this is what I wanted to update everyone in the first broadcast of the year of 2021. I'm afraid it's not all good news. It is, in fact, gloomy, and the prospect of a short, swift skirmish hasn't really gone away between India and China. So, therefore, let's be on our guard. Let's support our soldiers. And of course, we will keep bringing to you live updates whenever possible. But the fact is, Indian Army, Indian Air Force, and the Indian leadership has now shown that despite the early surprise and setback for about a week or so in May 2020, the Indian military has got onto the top of the game. It has got the situation under control, and the swift response and the deployment has really surprised the Chinese. And so, a military stalemate is something that is now currently on along the LAC. And a military stalemate is not what the Chinese had expected. Uh, Denial of an outright victory to the Chinese is actually defeat for the Chinese, because they are a bigger military. They had the element of surprise on their side, and yet the Chinese couldn't force their way through in Ladakh. This is something that we must all take note of. But of course, the danger hasn't gone away, and it is not likely to go away so soon. So at the moment, that's all I have in this program. Do keep watching StratNews Global. Keep subscribing to our, those who haven't subscribed, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Keep visiting our website, stratnewsglobal.com. And of course, comment, give us feedback, and like us on our social media handles on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and of course, YouTube. Until the next time, this is Nitin Gokhale saying goodbye.